Welcome, everyone. Today is Monday, November 6, 2023, and this is a regular meeting of the City of Asbury Park Planning Board. Chairwoman Kurzak, can you please call this meeting to order?
Yes, this meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and Asbury Park Press by publication of the annual meeting notice and posted on the municipal bulletin board and municipal website. All notices are on file with the board secretary. Official action may be taken on the following matters before the board. Fire exits are located on east and west sides of council chambers as well as the back of the building. I will ask everyone with a cell phone or other device to kindly silence your device for the duration of this meeting. And this meeting is being recorded by APTV for your viewing pleasure. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
I will now take roll call. James Bonanno.
Here.
Councilwoman Clayton.
Here.
Eric Gallipo.
Here.
Jim Henry.
Here.
John Moore is absent. Daniel Shinameo is absent. Jennifer Souter.
Here.
Pedro Travella is absent. Vice Chair Mike Goonan.
Here.
And Chairwoman Barbara Kurzak.
Here. Okay, the first item that we have is a resolution for 614 Cookman Avenue. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution?
Move to approve.
Second.
Yvonne and Mike.
Wait a minute, who moved it?
Yvonne was moved
Perfect,
and
okay.
second was Mike
That's
Goonan.
fine, okay.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep, Jennifer Souter.
Yes.
Yvonne Clayton.
Yes.
James Bonanno.
Yes.
Eric Gallipo.
Yes.
Mike Goonan.
Yes. Okay, first application up is 302 Atkins Avenue, Interfaith Neighbors.
Madam Chairwoman, I reviewed the notices, they're in proper form, we have jurisdiction here this morning.
Okay.
Madam Hunt Perry, on behalf of the applicant Interfaith Neighbors, Inc.
Okay.
Just as a matter, if I may, a matter of clarity. Originally, the eligible members would have been Jim Henry, Barbara, Yvonne, John Moore, and Eric, okay? So without Eric here, or without John here, excuse me, we would have 4. We're good, 4 out of 7.
Okay.
So, and if we needed extra members, under the rule of necessity, we would be able to accommodate and have everybody else vote as well.
Okay, but this is, I think that, well, actually, you'll tell us what it is to determine if this is major enough for us to be that concerned.
No, we're not, we're fine.
Okay,
We're
good.
We're good.
Do you swear my witness?
Yes, Paul, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear testimony about giving this matter the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record and spell it.
Paul McEvely, MC, E V as in Victor, ILY.
Thank you.
Mr. McKevley, would you state your position with Interfaith Neighbors, Inc.?
I am the Executive Director of Interfaith Neighbors.
And you're familiar with this application?
I am.
Would you describe for the board the relief we're asking for today?
Yes. You have before you an application for amended site plan for our Early Childhood Learning Center on 302 Atkins Avenue, which we opened about 6 weeks ago. And the application involves a change in fence height from 4 feet to 6 feet. And I have a couple of exhibits here, if I could get them marked and hand them out.
Before we do that, would you state the reasons for the why we're back here asking for this relief?
Yes, thank you. This is an early childhood learning center for children ages 3 months to 3 years. It's at the corner of Atkins and Jefferson Avenue. When we were about 3/4 of the way through the project, construction of the project, we asked the sheriff's office to come out and do a security assessment of the project. Sheriff Golden came out, he made a number of recommendations to upgrade the security we already had built into the plan. Some of those recommendations involved direct communication to the sheriff's office, increase in some of the security related to access and control within the building, and a raising of the fence height from 4 feet to 6 feet around the small playground that's at the rear of the property.
You have the pictures?
Yeah, if I can pass these out.
Before you do that, Jack, can I mark these in evidence?
Sure. A1, all right. So is there more than one exhibit or just copies?
There are two.
Two exhibits, A1, A2, please, on today's date.
Please describe for the board the exhibit marked A1.
So the first exhibit, which is the pictures, color pictures. The first picture is a picture taken earlier today, by the way, of the playground at 302 Atkins Avenue at the rear of the building. The second picture is a picture of the fence installed at 6 feet and looking east on Jefferson Avenue. And then the last picture is a picture of the fence that surrounds the playground on the left and the fence that surrounds the ball fields of the middle school, which is the adjoining property. And I think as you can see in that third photo, the fence around the ball fields at the middle school is approximately 7.5 feet above grade, where the fence we have installed is 6 feet. And again, the recommendation of the sheriff was to increase the height from 4 feet to 6 feet, not because we thought a three-year-old could climb over a 4-foot fence, but that somebody walking along the sidewalk could actually reach over a 4-foot fence and grab hold of one of the children. So that was one of a series of recommendations that the sheriff made to improve security at the site. The second handout in the package, although she couldn't be here this evening to offer testimony, this is a letter we received from one of the neighbors on the street who has a child at the Early Childhood Learning Center. She happens to be...
You're going to submit a letter into evidence and there's nobody here to... It's hearsay.
It's hearsay.
Yes, it is. Why don't you ask him some questions to work around what's there?
Have you had any input from the surrounding neighbors with respect to the prospect of raising this fence?
Yes, one of the families who has a child attending the Early Childhood Learning Center actually lives on the street and has expressed her concern about activity in the neighborhood involving drugs and nefarious elements, if you will, in the neighborhood. And she's concerned about the neighborhood and wants to see that the school is successful, but that it also enjoys a high level of security for the protection of her child and the other children in the school.
Maybe I can jump in and help you here a little bit? Okay. The comments you've received from the neighbors in generally support the findings and recommendations of the sheriff?
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you, Jack.
Anything further on that point? I didn't think so. Okay. Sorry.
That's quite all right. I was gonna get there eventually, Jack.
No, I get it.
Okay.
So that's really all I have to offer and what we're asking.
So, just a question here, that the third photo that you have here, it looks like, so are you saying that the fence on the left is 4 feet and the fence on the right is 7?
No, the fence on the left, the black fence, is the fence that surrounds our playground.
Right.
It is installed at 6 feet.
Oh, that's 6 feet already?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're actually operating under a temporary certificate of occupancy until we could address the fence issue.
All right, so the fence around the whole, everything is already 6 feet?
Correct.
You're not allowed to have 6 feet?
Correct.
So that's why you're here?
That's why we're here.
Okay,
But it is in place,
okay,
and what you're looking at there is
all right,
what's there,
okay.
what will be. I'll open up to any questions from the board. We're done with our presentation.
The questions I have, did I hear correctly that the sheriff's office, Monmouth County Sheriff's Office, recommended that the height be increased to 6 feet?
It's one of the recommendations they made, yes.
Do we have any other questions from anybody, any planning board members? No questions? All right, can I, any questions from the public? No? Any comments from the planning board members? No comments?
I think we should do it.
Okay. We have to open up to the comments, gonna get a motion to open to the public for comments?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
All right, anyone from the public would like to make a comment?
Motion to close.
Second. Okay. All right, we'll make a motion to allow the increase of the fence to be 6 feet as supported by the sheriff's request for security purposes.
You good with the motion?
Yes.
Second, please.
Why don't I call the roll on this one since I know who's going to be eligible? Jim Henry,
Yes.
Barbara Krizak,
Yes.
Yvonne Clayton,
Yes.
Eric Gallo.
Yes.
4 out of 7.
Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, take care.
All right.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I think your next agenda item. I've got a short presentation, just in 1 second.
So what are you doing? Just
We're listening to
Just
it.
listening.
We're listening, and then we have to, I'm assuming we have to vote. That we approve it, or we have questions. Oh, we'll find out when she starts. Why are you here?
Yeah, I thought so too.
I'm confused, but I don't understand. No, I have it. I have it.
I only have,
No, I'm good. I have this. I'm good. I don't need it.
Lori, do you have a copy of the referral resolution from
I
council?
don't need it. I have that on.
Okay, when you get a chance, we'll mark that in.
Yeah, I'm just saying I don't understand it.
We'll make that C1,
I'm confused.
please. C1. Today's date.
I'll tell you.
Okay? Okay.
So, sorry, before you start, Beth, I just want to make sure, or are we back on the record?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure everybody that just disclose that I am a direct neighbor of the redevelopment area that is being proposed. And in the past, we have allowed me to participate in
Sure.
the consideration of redevelopment plans, but not specific applications. So I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that that's on
if
there.
if this was an application where you were noticed within 200 feet, you wouldn't sit.
Yeah, I just want to
This
make
is
sure.
a
everybody's aware.
review of the proposed plan.
Yep.
You're entitled to sit.
Okay. It's on the record.
And then the other thing that I would ask is that if you let us know what's expected of us, and outside of why you're here,
Well,
what are we,
I'll
what,
tell you,
tell
let me
tell
get
us
that
what
sworn in,
we
and
want.
then I'll give you the
give us the
long
lowdown.
and short.
Give us the lowdown.
Beth, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear testimony about giving this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Beth McManus, McManus.
Okay. And you are still the planning consultant for the city in these matters?
Yes.
Okay. No reason to go through her qualifications.
No.
She's testified many
Yes.
times before us. Our task this evening, under redevelopment law, we've been forwarded this plan for review and comment based on consistency with the master plan. We have to analyze whether it is or it isn't, and Beth's going to tell us that. And any other matters that we deem appropriate for commentary.
And that commentary would go to
Mayor and council. we
mayor
send
and
it back.
council, and then they can decide whether.
Yes, and we did this once before on this project, on February 8th of '22. You had me prepare the letter, which we used at that point in time, and I understand subsequent to that, there's been a lot of discussion and creative work done by a lot of people, including commentary from Eric and a number of other folks in town. So it's the standard review. Instead of it like an ordinance, you have 35 days to review for consistency. This, we had 45 days. We send back the recommendations, they're non-binding, but we make them anyway, and we go from there.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So what I planned for this evening was a short presentation on the plan itself, so that the contents are clear to folks, and then to invite commentary from the board. Any questions, comments you'd like to make, and then I thought we would end on the master plan. I'm happy to reverse course if anybody would like, but I thought
Okay.
that was good.
And just so that the public knows, we will conduct it the same way we do everything else, where the public can ask questions, and then you will be able to make comments, just like we do on every other application. Okay?
Okay, here we go.
Floor's yours.
All right, so what's before everybody this evening is a draft redevelopment plan for a single property in town. It's referred to as 1201 Memorial Avenue, but it's also block 203, lot 5.
Let's call that C2.
Okay, here we go. So the property, as I said, it's a single lot. It principally fronts on Memorial Drive, consistent with the name of the redevelopment plan.
There it is.
Okay. Try to make things a little bit more sensitive.
Keep it exciting.
Okay, here we go again. Single site, fronts on Memorial Drive, but it also, as you can see in this plan, this map, it also, of course, has frontage along two of the side streets, 5th Avenue and 4th Avenue. The redevelopment plan is principally concerning redevelopment of the site with a single building, and included in the redevelopment plan are a number of objectives that I'll go through in short order. But essentially it is to promote redevelopment of the site. This is a long vacant property on one of the city's primary corridors in town, Memorial Drive. We are also seeking to create diverse housing opportunities, and by that, it's really in reference to the affordable housing included on the property, which is a 20% set aside, with the remaining 80% being for market rate. Additionally, we're also looking to promote economic development in the city, using mixed-use development and emphasizing residential development in this particular location so that it can help feed the commercial businesses here in the city. Although I will say, and you'll see later in the presentation, that the site does include a mix of residential as well as commercial uses. Additional redevelopment plan objectives is to maintain their overall character and try to limit impacts on the surrounding single-family neighborhood that's located largely to the west of the property. We're also looking to create a unique sense of place on the site using interesting architecture. There's also an incorporation of public arts. And you can see that listed or referenced in the 6th objective. So the general provisions, before we get into the details about development. So first, the redevelopment plan has been prepared for the developer that the city has been engaging with. And it's anticipated, but not done, that developer will be the designated redeveloper, and it is only that designated redeveloper that will be able to proceed with the project. Furthermore, site plan application, any site plan application that comes before all of you must include the entire redevelopment area, so there's no opportunity to subdivide and parcel off the redevelopment area. And the purpose of those two provisions, as well as some of the other terms in the redevelopment plan, is really to guarantee certainty. The city, through today's date, or when the redevelopment plan was crafted, was really intended to be a specific project that addresses certain concerns that have been raised by the public and raised by the council. And so this provision that it must be the designated redeveloper, plus it must be the entire redevelopment area, is intended to give as much certainty as to what this project will be as possible. Also, I want to note that there's no acquisition of property that's proposed by the city. And another way that certainty and another limitation that's set forth in the plan is that any redeveloper is not permitted to come in with a D variance. So that means that there's no height variance that would exceed 10%, that would be a D variance height. There's no prohibited use that would be permitted, even through the variance avenue. Instead, a developer would have to seek an amendment to the redevelopment plan. So it's a very strong term in those regards. So for the regulations, first and foremost, you'll see in Exhibit A of the plan, the concept site plan that's shown on the screen. And essentially what the redevelopment plan states is this plan must be constructed. This plan must be consistent with the site plan application that would eventually come before the planning board. And what you see here is, this is just simply the first floor concept plan. And you see three retail spaces along Memorial Avenue that totals a little more than 1,900 square feet, thank you. As well as first floor parking. And on the parking, I want to note the parking that's shown in the yellow or tan color, that is within or underneath the structure of the building. The parking spaces that you see that are shown in white are surface parking that extends out the back, so to speak, of the building. Also, the plan permits up to 130 upper story apartments. So it's essentially first floor parking with retail spaces along Memorial with upper story apartments. In terms of the architecture of the building, similar to that site concept plan, the redevelopment plan states that the later architectural elevations that would come before all of you as part of the site plan application must be consistent with the elevations of the renderings that are shown in Appendix B to the redevelopment plan. And so right here, we have the Memorial Drive frontage, and I think what's noteworthy on this image is you can see the 3 retail spaces facing Memorial Drive, one at either end and then another in the center. And between those retail spaces, you can see a handful of spaces for public art. I will note that the public art shown on the appendix is not required to be the final design that would be provided on the building. It's just simply an illustrative design for the potential artwork. Here we have another view of the building. This is the 5th Avenue and Memorial Drive frontage. And I think what's noteworthy here is, yes, you can see that those same parts of the Memorial Drive frontage that I just referenced, but you can also see the primary person entrance, if you will, along 5th Avenue. And here is a better, more direct view of that 5th Avenue frontage. Okay, and so in terms of the redevelopment plan text for the regulations, for permitted uses, we have those first floor non-residential uses. They need to be consistent with the permitted uses of the B district. The B district permits a variety of uses, things like retail, personal services, convenience stores, business and the trade schools, fitness clubs, laundromats, dance studios, similar instruction schools, etc. So really a pretty wide variety of commercial uses are permitted in those 3 retail areas. Also permitted in the first floor is accessory residential uses such as the lobby, mailroom, utilities, etc., and then of course parking. For the upper stories, the permitted uses are pretty straightforward. It's those apartments that I referenced, up to 130, as well as any residential accessory uses that the developer might like, such as amenity space. Additionally, for the regulations, I have a summary of what I think are some of the most critical aspects of the plan. So first and foremost, we have a 20% set aside of affordable housing. So the developer will be providing more than 20 affordable units that will be reserved for folks or households with low and moderate incomes. And I should note that all of those units, all those affordable units will be compliant with the city's affordable housing ordinance and will be eligible for credit against an affordable housing obligation.
So that's a minimum of 26.
Yeah, yes.
Right?
Yes. But it's 20% of the ultimate number. So if it's 130, yes, 26 units. If it's 120 units, it would be a little bit less. The maximum building height is 4 stories or 48 feet, excluding any penthouse level. And I want to note that that is consistent with the existing height, permitted height of the B district. I think the B district is actually 4 stories, 50 feet. So this is minimally different at 4 stories, 48 feet. For the rear property line, which is of course, the property line that abuts the single-family neighbors, there are 3 provisions in here that are intended to help mitigate any impact. First is the minimum setback of 25 feet, and I think that can be compared to 20 feet in the B district. We're also requiring a solid fence and also a 5-foot planted buffer in order to help mitigate the view and activity that will be newly generated by redevelopment of the site. We're also including a 85% maximum impervious cover, and that can be compared to 80% in the B district. For parking, it's 1 parking space per multifamily unit, including the affordable units. No parking is required for the non-residential spaces, non-residential floor area. And then we're also requiring street trees along the frontage of the site, and there are a handful of sustainability regulations intended to promote green building on the property. And I think that is a very brief overview. Yeah, that is a very brief overview of the redevelopment plan. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions and to hear any comments folks may have.
Can you go to the Fifth Avenue frontage?
Sure. This one?
Yes,
Yeah.
because that center that says the Braverman, and is that where you're talking about 4 stories, 48 feet? Is that above that? Because that there's an extension above the penthouse.
No, the height is 48 feet, consistent with how the city measures building height.
Okay, so that seems to be the highest on the whole building, is that area from what we can see.
Yes.
And that's on Fifth.
Yes.
Okay.
And I should note that there's a.
No, that's Fifth.
That's fit.
Yeah,
That's Fifth.
Yeah,
That's
and I should
Fifth.
note that the vehicle entrance, I didn't say that, but just so folks are clear, the vehicle entrance is from Fourth, just as a side note.
The vehicle entrance is on
So
Fourth
this is-
only.
Yeah, so what you see
Yeah.
here is the
Okay.
people entrance, so to speak. So let
Yes.
me show the concept plan. There we go. Oops. There you go.
I think if I may paraphrase for Chairwoman Kurzak, you are talking about the canopy over the 4th floor, right?
No, not the canopy, I'm talking about what's next to the canopy.
Oh, that's the stair overrun, so you don't.
So it's, if there's a certain amount of feet over the canopy,
Right. Well, the canopy is over 48 feet as well.
so that
So
is
the-
even higher than the canopy.
Could you go to the other?
The Fifth Avenue.
So, no,
That one.
This is where 48 feet is.
Okay, so,
Right? And then this is your stair overruns and your penthouse level, and this is a canopy.
Yes.
Those are
So-
all above 48 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was speaking of compliance specifically, so.
I'm just
yeah.
trying to
Yes.
understand
Yeah.
what's
So the-
over 48 feet.
So the requirement is, it's 4 stories, 48 feet, excluding penthouses. Penthouses may not penthouses may not be more than 20% of the roof area of the building, and may not exceed a height of 12 feet.
Okay, so now we have the penthouses, which are on the right, and then the part on the right is even further than 12 feet. Because you've got the penthouse, up in the center,
The center.
there. That's even higher than the penthouses. And
No, these are not the penthouses.
No.
You don't see
no,
the penthouses.
the green on the left, those are penthouses, I'm assuming.
That's
that true?
just an outdoor canopy.
Okay, no matter what, the outdoor canopy is higher than 48,
Correct.
and the center is much higher than 48. Is that what is normally in a B district? Is that normal, or is this an exception?
I can't tell you what may have been approved in the B district, but I can tell you, as I look at your B district regulations for 4 stories, 50 feet, plus the height exceptions that are located elsewhere in your ordinance that exempt penthouses at 20% of the roof area up to 12 feet in
12 feet high.
That is what's stated in the redevelopment plan, that is what the redeveloper will be held to. But I can't tell it, but I don't have enough information about your other B district approvals to give you that comparison.
Okay. I don't know, I'm a little concerned about it because you're on Fifth. You're not on Memorial, you're on Fifth. I'm a little concerned that that center is so high above the canopy. I'm not saying visually that it's not appealing. I'm just saying that I don't know what.
Do you know the height of that?
I don't have that specific number.
Okay.
What can it not exceed, the height?
It's
total?
48 feet plus the penthouse height of 12 feet, provided
So it can't-
it meets the definition of
Maximum of
penthouse.
60 feet.
It can't be more than 60 feet.
Okay.
So we don't know how high it
But
is.
the penthouses sit, so the elevation that you're showing for Memorial, Beth, if you don't mind switching there, that actually shows where your penthouses are the other way.
All right.
Yeah.
Here's your.
So they are equal to where the greenery is, but
Correct.
still the side is even above that.
And that is because there's an overrun from the stair and the elevator that causes it to bump up a little, and that's not counted.
But is it allowed?
Yes. Yes,
allowed.
your mechanicals and your stair overruns and your elevators and anything that pops up over your height limit is permitted.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the city has flexibility in its height
Yeah,
regulations.
and that's very typical in everywhere.
Urban areas in particular,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very typical that the building height is measured to the top of the units, and then there's stuff that sticks up past that is allowed typically.
I don't think that's the interpretation. I think you're talking about a building height of 48 feet plus the penthouse, which can be a maximum of 12 feet. And now you're talking about a tower that is substantially above that. You're talking 60 feet plus
Something.
maybe another 8 or 10 feet.
Now, what I would also note in this location is that the closest building to this, in which I live, is 100 feet away.
So let's be careful not to
It's-
testify.
No, yeah, but I can read the dimensions off of this site plan. That tower is minimum 100 feet away from the closest residential property.
That's not my question, but okay, thank you. Okay. Have another, if anybody else has any questions while I get my other ones
On
together.
this topic, when you read this, it's section E3A, it actually says that the penthouses can't be more than 12 square feet, which I assume is not what it's intended. I assume you mean 12 feet in height. That just needs to be corrected.
Thank you. Yeah, I will make that change. Thank you very much. That was not.
I had a quick question about the sustainability requirements, and it says Energy Star multifamily or alternative per HFMA. I know we don't know all the details, but if it's going through HFMA, that's one thing, but if it's not, then that's required regardless of HMFA, right?
Yes, I'm not anticipating this project is going to receive tax credits, but it's a sustainability requirement that the developer agreed to meet.
I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask as well, when you get ready.
All set, thank you.
This building, as proposed, is substantially bigger than any building in the area. The one closest to this on the south is a 2-story building where Hogue had its plumbing business. The closest building to this that's anywhere near approaching this magnitude is Georgie's across the railroad track. Because this thing is so much larger in mass than anything in the area, why are we not getting more affordable units? Why are we only getting 20%? Why don't we get a fixed number, 40 maybe, or 30%, 35%. Why limit it to 20?
Well, 20% is a standard affordable housing set aside, and I don't typically, I've never seen a 30% or higher set aside building that wasn't going to be the subject of a significant infusion of outside funding. So for example, the 1012 Asbury Avenue redevelopment plan that I presented a handful of months ago, they're doing a 40% set aside and then some additional workforce housing. That project, I think, is similar in some respects in the sense that it's a significantly larger building than what we saw in the surrounding area. They were able to achieve a 40% set aside specifically because they're anticipating receiving tax credits, a significant amount of tax credits, outside funding to support the project. So I don't see 30% or above set asides without that type of public funding associated with it.
Well, you have, in this particular instance, you've got a building substantially larger than anything in the area, which does not conform to the master plan. And, you know, there's a proposed 130 units in this building. If this building were in the scale of everything else in the area, that number would have been decreased substantially. I don't know the number, but it would have been decreased substantially. We're increasing the size of the building to accommodate this particular development. Why shouldn't we increase the number of affordable units as well?
Well, as I will say, as the building grows, as the number of units grow, the affordable housing will grow. But one point I think that the board should consider, the building is larger than what would otherwise be permitted in the B district. The density, for example, is significantly greater. However, the building height, the impervious cover, setbacks are very similar to what you see in the B district. So I don't think that the building itself is significantly larger than what is permitted in the B district. It's significantly larger than what exists in its adjacent properties. And the density is significantly more, but the building itself is not significantly larger. So to your point about the affordable housing, I think that remains a relevant point, but I just want to be clear that the buildings surrounding the property, the commercial buildings along Memorial, are undersized compared to what the B district permits.
But they exist.
They do, yes, it certainly speaks to the character, absolutely.
Okay.
But one thing, if I may, Jim,
Go ahead.
one thing that we can do, though, as a board, as we discussed, is to say, okay, we recommend that we bump up that number to the council, and then they can decide whether they comply or not, whether they will make modifications or not. But we can
Thank you.
make that request.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Excuse me, the renderings that you submitted do not show the south or west elevation of the building. But the plot plan, excuse me, yes, the plot plan shows the green space on the west side of the building, and then a fence on the property line, correct?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be better, since that faces the residential areas to the west, put the fence line at the building line and put the green space between the fence and the property line?
Hold on.
Would that be more appealing to the people who live to the west of the building?
So essentially place the greenery adjacent to the homes rather than the fence adjacent to the homes?
Correct.
I think it might depend on the particular neighbor. I've seen in other planning board applications, not in this town, that sometimes folks would prefer to have trees next to their property. Other times they would prefer to have a solid fence. I would suspect that that's something that the board could accomplish during site plan and could also be one of the board's comments for this plan.
What we can do is we can make that comment, and then as long as they're not held to this, that when the site plan does come, or even if there's comments in the, from the public when they come, hoping that some people that live close to there would be here, and they could perhaps give us some insight.
And I believe that the requirement is a solid fence shall be provided along the rear property line at a maximum height of 6 feet. I think that the board would have flexibility to alter the location, since the buffer's only between 5 and, say, 15 feet as shown on the concept plan. I think that you'd have the ability to set that off from the property line a little bit in order to accommodate that type of concern.
We'd like to reserve that type of request, that we are able to do that.
You can put that in as a recommendation
Right,
that the plan allow for that flexibility.
right. We want the flexibility of that fence.
I would suggest maybe you sort of talk about it as the buffer.
Yeah. No, the whole buffer.
Right.
You're
Yeah,
absolutely
not just
right.
the fence, sort
You're
of like
absolutely
that
right.
buffered area will
Right.
touch up at site plan.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
There's already a
The sign must be part of the buffer in some location.
As opposed to two separate requirements, there shall be a fence and then there shall be a buffer. There shall be a buffer that includes trees and a fence.
Right,
There's-
exactly.
There's ultimate flexibility.
And then it
Correct.
gives the board, which I will not be involved with at the time, the right to put the fence where one will.
The plan that you have up here on the screen right now is substantially different than the renderings that you have on Memorial and the Fifth Avenue facade. If you look at those renderings, you'll see that the sidewalks appear to go up to the building. I'm assuming that the light green spaces here are landscaped grass areas. And anything that I have to read with a magnifying glass, I don't read. So,
Fair enough.
on the renderings, it appears that this is sidewalk.
Right, that's why we,
This
So,
might be actually another great example of where I think the board should be reserving the right to sort of modify the exterior because we don't know exactly where the retail's gonna be, correct?
The concept plan shows it anchoring at the two ends of the building and one in the corner. Whether I would say there's some flexibility about shifting those one way or the other, but I would interpret the plan to not permit a single section of retail in one area of the building and none elsewhere.
right, but I think that what we're talking about here is more so that it's hard for us to tell what this really is because the concept here is different than what we have here.
Okay.
Which is the layout of the first floor. It's hard to tell the difference because it looks different. Not necessarily that there are three retail, but where are the sidewalks? Where's the greenery?
I got you.
It's hard for us to tell that. It's not like we're asking for something different. It's
No, but
like
you need a more
we're unsure.
well-developed- You need a more well-developed plan
Yes.
to consider.
Correct.
So I think that you sort of, in the same way you want to give yourself the flexibility
Yes.
in site plan approval to say,
Agreed.
okay, here's how this sidewalk should work to support those uses.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there an elevator in this building? And if so, where is it located?
That's not yet been determined. That's not yet been determined. That'll be subject to site plan and building code.
Okay, well, based on what we have, what we had up there a minute ago, it seems like there isn't much room for an elevator. I don't know where it would go along this thing, but you have this area pretty well earmarked for other uses. What they are, I couldn't read because the printing is too small, but
It's my understanding that building code requires an elevator for 4-story buildings, and I would imagine that I am certain the developer will be required to comply with the building code.
yeah, anything over 3 stories requires it. But the problem I have is it's not shown on the ground floor plan that I can determine.
Yeah,
So-
it's right above the lobby.
Where?
Just-
In that little
Yeah,
square.
just.
That little square?
Just west of the lobby, that.
Looks like that square.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the stairs for sure, and the other one looks what I assume.
Here, this one.
Yeah,
Here,
out
here.
there was-
Yeah, well-
the stairs just.
It's hard for us to tell.
That's correct. That is my interpretation, that it is showing a
Yeah, one is
stair
stairs,
and
this
then-
is probably the elevator, that's probably the
Okay.
stairs, because you can see the doors.
Okay.
It seems unlikely you would build a 5-story
Do you
building
know
with
what the
penthouses.
these drywall aisles and the areas parking lot are? Or is it general guess if you have?
It is shown on the plan. Hold on one second.
They're like 23 feet, it looks like. They're all about 23 feet.
Yeah. They're shown right. I don't have a mouse in this view, but you can see them labeled on the concept plan. Give me one moment, I'll read it.
This is the presentation. Okay.
Right before you got here. And it's in the 30 emails that I got in the last 2 hours.
And is the south elevation similar to the north elevation?
I would anticipate so, yeah. The architectural design will be continued around that side of the building.
And how about to the west elevation?
I have, that plan has not been provided. That'll be subject to the planning board's review during site plan.
I might recommend that the redevelopment plan includes some language to make the west-facing facades harmonious in texture or color or something to the other three facades. I don't think it should require them to be exactly the same because we do want to meet the goals of affordable housing, and so increasing the facade cost on non-street facing facades isn't where we should be spending our money, right? So we want nice looking facades in those directions, but they don't have to be identical materials, I would say.
But that comes with site plan approval, as will all the other
But
sides.
the language in the redevelopment plan could suggest consistent materials so that so that when they arrive, that's already sort of been baked into your consideration at that point.
You want to avoid the situation.
What you said, harmonious.
Yeah, compatible, complementary.
You want to avoid the situation where the developer comes in and says, this is what you have to approve on this side. You want the flexibility to say, west facade should be harmonious with the other three sides.
So I also want to point out, we have a standard in there that might satisfy your concern. Building materials and architectural details on all sides of each building need not be identical, but shall be unified in overall appearance through finished materials, details, and architectural
That's
design.
Completely adequate, I would think.
Yes?
That works?
Yeah, and I think it gets to
Okay.
Jim's point as well, is how does the south and west, how does the west facade
Okay.
line up with the others?
I have a question about setbacks.
Sure.
On Fourth, I know on the memorial was right on the property line. On Fourth and Fifth, when we talked about this like a year and a half ago, there was a lot of discussion about the prevailing setback on Fourth and Fifth Avenue to the homes versus what was going to be allowed here. Where does this plan land?
The setbacks, so we have 22 feet are required for both the side avenues. That 22 feet is intended to be approximately the setback of the homes on either side.
It is, the new corridors are preserved.
Yes,
Great.
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that was the number one recommendation in your letter. back
Yeah.
then.
If there's something that, I don't know what capabilities you have as far as when the site plans do come, but I think that the board would feel more comfortable if we saw where the houses that are abutting this, where are their porches, so that we can see that there's a clear view, because that was something that was very concerning to us.
I feel, I suspect the developer will provide that information to you.
And if they don't, you
And if
make
they
them come
don't,
back.
they'll have to come back.
You make them come back with it.
We-
You see the full picture.
Just so you know, that's, you know how much we care about that.
Review and vote on it in the abstract. You want to see the picture.
Okay. Go ahead.
Along those lines, Fifth Memorial and Fourth Avenue, all the building line is right up to the property line.
I'm sorry, say that again?
No.
What you have proposed here
can't
is that
speak,
you're
Mr.
building
Chair.
right up to the property line on Fifth Memorial and Fourth.
No, that's not quite true. We have about a 22-foot setback shown on the plans, including the concept plan.
On here.
Yep. And somewhere in the narrative, I read that you're building up to the property line.
I think you're referring to the Memorial Drive frontage. That has a 0-foot setback that's permitted.
Okay.
Yep.
If I'm wrong about the other two, I stand corrected.
That's okay. It's page 7, and then goes on to page 8, where it cites the setbacks for all 4 property lines.
Okay.
So I have some questions about site circulation. Now, currently it's being shown all ins and outs on 4th Avenue. I believe when we sent our letter last time, we recommended that entrances come off of Memorial. That was one of our recommendations from the planning board previously. I'm curious, was it ever considered that the circulation should come in and off of Memorial, allowing more people to distribute in the natural directions rather than putting all of the cars onto 4th Avenue, which will then feel the entire impact of the site, both from incoming traffic, prioritizing 4th Avenue as their route to the site, and outgoing traffic prioritizing 4th Avenue as their route primarily to points westward. So I would recommend that the board be allowed the flexibility to consider other locations for site ingress and egress. Because the way I read the plan, if the facades must be of the proposal must be substantially consistent with this concept, it locks you into 4th Avenue.
It does. So, and I want to be really clear about that. This redevelopment plan is currently written would not permit the board to reverse the site access essentially, or to change that to an alternative street. If the board wants to make that change, it would have to be an amendment to the redevelopment plan. In terms of the original question was that considered, I don't believe I have seen a plan with Memorial Drive access. It had been, I think, talked about 4th versus 5th only is my recollection. One thing I will say is I understand the concern about folks utilizing 4th Avenue for access. But even if folks are coming from the west, they're always going to have to utilize 4th or perhaps one of the other east-west streets in order to get to Memorial Drive. And one of the concerns is preventing unnecessary curb cuts along Memorial Drive so that we can create as much safe pedestrian access along that busy street as possible, and also to better regulate vehicles turning onto Memorial Drive at defined intersections as opposed to additional curb cuts. That said, I do think that this is a legitimate issue for the board to consider.
I would just to say it's one curb cut in 300 feet. Mm-hmm. So that's the size of a football field. And it is 300 feet from one end of the site to the other. And so that one curb cut, well marked, well protected, well designed, would allow drivers to come in and out of the site, and then they will naturally distribute to the correct route for them, be it Sunset, 4th, 3rd, or 1st, which are all, Asbury, which are all of the connecting routes and through streets to other locations. Go, yes, I'll be quiet now.
But if I may, what you can do, that could be another one of those requests, the board be given the power to do that. Whether or not the council gives it to you is another matter.
But because Memorial is a very busy street, having the traffic cut across one lane of traffic to go, wouldn't that create a problem?
I believe that the impact on the neighbors to the west on 4th Avenue will be acutely felt by the level of traffic coming in and out on 4th Avenue. Prioritizing 4th Avenue as a through street, which we should be giving people more opportunity to get to the more obvious through streets of Sunset and Asbury. And so in order to get to those other through streets, they would have to essentially go backwards. And so I don't, there may be different perspectives on this. However, what I do know is that, well, what I would suggest is that the board consider whether this is the right place for access when you think about, I believe, 120 parking spaces. So there's 120 vehicles coming in and out of 4th Avenue now. And so I would consider that having them come in and off of Memorial Drive in a well-designed way would be a preferable arrangement for reducing the impact on the surrounding neighborhood.
That's a fair assessment, and I hear what you're saying. Yvonne does have a good point, though, about crossing over Memorial, a higher volume road, more turns means more backing up.
4th Avenue is currently going to be signalized.
No, you can't do that.
No?
Yeah. 4th Avenue is going to be signalized at the, I'm asking a question about 4th.
I'm trying to speak first.
Mm.
So they're also creating a lot of more pedestrian complex crossing over Memorial into the garage. That's one concept.
But have
Everything you said is very fair.
Have there been any pedestrian counts on this site?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Okay. We're aware of the issues at 4th and Memorial, correct? Multiple crashes regularly.
Are we testifying?
No, I'm asking, but like, so.
There are crashes at Fort Memorial.
Yeah, we're aware and we've heard testimony in multiple applications and, like about the troubles at 4th and Memorial. And so my question is 4th and Memorial going to be a signalized intersection in the future as a result of the Memorial Drive plan that's being implemented now?
Yeah.
So there will be a light there, a stop and start light.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the distance between the intersection at Memorial and to where it's currently located will be shorter than it would be if it were located in the middle of the Memorial Drive frontage. So I think the board should consider about the site ingress and egress, whether this is the correct location.
So there's a traffic light coming to 4th Avenue?
Yes.
Do you have a timing anticipated? Like less than a decade?
Hopefully 2024.
Oh, okay. Soon then,
That's a follow-up
soon.
question about Memorial. Is there going to be bi-directional bike lane? And is that going to
Well,
be?
opposite side of the street.
That's what was my question, east or west side?
One on each side of the street.
One on each
Not
side.
by side, it's outside track.
I think,
I will say typically you see folks trying to direct traffic towards a signalized intersection where that's applicable. So that you can regulate access to, in this case, Memorial, the busier drive, consistent with the traffic light, and also to avoid any conflicts as folks might be exiting mid-block with those exiting or entering 4th Avenue. So I think the board just needs to consider a couple of these factors.
yeah, and I will stand by the recommendation that the board makes, but I think what I know is that having the entry on Memorial Drive will reduce the impact on the surrounding residential neighborhood by distributing trips more easily to the greatest number of destinations without relying on 4th Avenue.
Thank you.
That's a question about parking.
Sure.
So the plan says a minimum of 1 parking space per multifamily unit
Mm-hmm.
after credits for electric vehicle parking spaces are assigned. So does that mean there actually are going to be physically the number of spaces to match, or you still get the electric vehicle?
It means that there has to be physically 1 space per unit.
So electric vehicle credits still apply?
Yeah, it's intended to, so that's written in that way so that it's intended to be clear. And if one of the board's comment is you want clarity on that, I can add that. But the intention is to not simply require 1 space per unit and then the developer provides the electric vehicles, which are charging that is required, and as a result provides less than 1 space per unit
You need to
physically.
clarify that. That needs to be clarified.
Yeah, I found it very confusing when it said after credits for electric vehicle parking spaces are assigned. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, because I can envision an attorney waltzing in here and making that argument, so let's clarify it.
Okay.
And then also on parking, it talked about reserving spaces for rental cars. In my personal opinion, if they want to put in rental cars, great, but as a planning board, my thought was, I don't know if we should be dictating a minimum or maximum number of spaces. Personally, I feel like that should kind of be left up to market demand. But if we put it in the development plan, and then they're kind of bound. I don't know what other people think about that.
The one thing I will say is the reason why it's left to the discretion of the planning board is it gives you the ability to say, you know what, reserving parking for the residents here is more important than the developer's desire to provide rental parking.
Well, I agree that personally, it's like, I think that the residents need the parking as opposed to car rentals. Because once again, once you're getting into car rentals, now you have everyone coming in to a residential unit. How are they getting in? Because I could say, hey, I want to rent a car. I'm going to Memorial Drive and getting a car. I don't live there.
I agree with that, and I would approach it not as a number of spaces, but limiting that any parking in the building can only be used for
By residents. Absolutely.
So they can have rental cars, because I could see a situation where people don't own cars who live in the building and want to use a zip code.
Right.
So I don't know that we need to say how many spaces are or aren't for rental cars.
Right.
But we may want to say if there are rental cars, they need to be for residents.
And there have to be 120 spaces.
Yeah,
Allotted.
Let's take this,
Go
let's
ahead.
take a little different approach.
Go ahead.
You want to make sure that you have adequate parking for your residents in the building.
Correct.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
So whether or not they own a car or they rent a car, they still have to have a parking space because it goes with the unit, right? So if they rent a car, they can park there.
They can
If
park any
don't-
car they want
If
there.
they don't rent a car and they own a car, they can park it there. But I don't think you don't want to get involved where you start having people, like you said, non-residents.
Yes,
renting cars
everything
from
has to
parking.
be residential.
So I would say
I would think you're going to have a nightmare.
So you need one space per unit. Great.
Right, period.
And I would just say rental cars are allowed, but only for residents of the building.
Right, but in their spot, in their assigned spot.
But that's not what the plan is saying.
Well, that's what I'm
That's the
saying, is that there's got to be 120.
Yeah, you should approach this from, the project needs X amount of
Yeah, it
spaces.
needs
for X
120.
amount of units.
Right.
How they get there, whether they rent a car, lease a car, own a car, borrow a car, that's your, I think.
I think what they're talking about is the car share.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I think what everyone wants here is that you want to have, so all the space we have, that was 120, was it?
It's one space per unit.
One space per unit, you want one space per unit for everybody in the unit, and then what it sounds like you guys want is, if there's gonna be a car share, you want extra spaces for the car share.
Right,
Right, so that's what we want.
right. If they want car share, then extra spaces.
But do we, because if I don't own a car,
So here's what I say to that, is I think it's a poor decision to have a car share that's only available to the residents of this building. I said this with Asbury Avenue 1 also. You're limiting your market for car share, and listen, most people already have a car in the first place, the people that don't have them, you want to get a bigger market to actually make use of those vehicles. But either way, I don't think you're hurting the building by doing, there's a few spaces that are car share within the whole, the one space per unit. Because we do have affordable housing units, which are more likely to have, to not have a vehicle. But I don't like the idea of the building is only having access to car shares.
Folks, this, just on the car share issue, it does provide at the discretion of the planning board. So if at site plan approval, they come in and you're displeased with the parking ratio and they're providing the 5% car share or rental cars, you have the ability to say, no. This redevelopment plan gives you that explicit ability since it's at your discretion.
Does that quantify the spaces in total?
It says reservation of the lesser of 5% total units or 4 parking spaces for the hourly rental of cars at the discretion of the planning board is
But you gotta
permitted.
have the exact number that you can require, because you can't have a flexible standard. It's void for vagueness. I understand what you're saying, but you have to have a definitive number. This project must have, this is the parking standard, 160 spaces. How you work it up within that, X for the unit owners and X for ride share is another matter. But it still has to come out to 160 spaces.
It goes on to state, just for the record, reserved parking spaces shall contribute to the satisfaction of the required parking pursuant to the previous section, parking requirements. So it permits 5%, 4 spaces at the discretion of the planning board.
Okay. Yeah, as long as the number's finite and we know where we have to be ultimately, how you break up the ratio is another story. That you can give flexibility to. But you can't give an unknown quantifier, or, unknown number, because the developer won't know the standard that they have to comply with. Okay,
Okay.
all right.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
With the plan you have up here, how many parking spaces are there now?
I don't remember the count. It was a little bit more than one space per unit. It was maybe 1.1, 1.2 spaces per unit at most.
So
There's a few extra shown on the plan, and that's why it requires a minimum of one space per unit, knowing that that's achievable on the site.
Is there room for a bike room, like for bike spaces?
Yes, there is. It is.
Yeah, I don't see any.
It is shown,
No, is this it?
Oh, it might be here.
the top right of the, if you look,
That box on top?
yeah, top right. Yeah, we have bicycle storage in there, and there's a bicycle parking requirement in here as well.
Is it from the inside or outside?
Accessible, was that your question?
Like,
Accessible?
I don't see a door on it.
It's from the inside.
And are there any streetscape improvements proposed as part of this?
Street trees.
Bike racks, benches, trees, whatever.
No, it's simply required that they'll have to provide street furnishings, but it's not shown on the plan. Nothing specific has been designed.
Oh, so the back of the building was open on the bottom floor, obviously for the parking lot. There, I see the fourth side, those like last two spaces under the building are kind of outside. Is there a wall, fencing, bushes, anything that's between the parking lot and the sidewalk, or is it all visible, accessible?
No, I would anticipate that there'll be landscaping. It's not, what you see in the concept plan, the redevelopment plan, doesn't include the proposed landscaping. It's not intended to be a concept plan for the purpose of plantings, et cetera. So it's not shown, but yes, that'll be subject to site plan approval by the planning board.
If we go back to streetscape furnishing, so are you saying it'll be more up to, once we have a plan at site plan approval time, if we want to talk about like scooter parking and benches and bike racks and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there something in there that says the planning board has the power to impose those?
Let's see, let me find this. Yeah, let me find this.
Including
Okay.
not limited to a
So this way,
Thank you.
shall be provided along all streets.
Yeah.
because I'm anticipating the argument, so I want to make sure I can point to it and say, yeah, we can do this.
Yep. Yeah, it specifically does require it along Memorial Drive in particular.
Thanks.
Does anybody else from the planning board have any other questions?
I just have one more that I thought was just a little unclear in there. G.3 says 60% of non-residential uses but on Memorial must be transparent. And when I first read that, I assumed that included the parking garage because parking is non-residential. But when you actually look at it, that's obviously not the case. It's really just the retail spaces that are transparent. So I would just recommend that wording be made.
Oh, to make clear that, it doesn't include the parking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to make that change. That's not the intent.
When we're all done, I have some legal recommendations, but I'll wait till we hear it from the public and everything else.
Planning board have any other questions of the witness? Okay, does the public have any questions for the witness? Questions, not comments, just
Yeah,
questions.
Keep in mind, there's twofold process. You get to ask questions first, then we'll get you back in for your personal comments. Oh, yeah,
Please,
you're up to bat.
name and address, please.
Catherine Minervini, 1012 Fifth Avenue. So when you say there's one parking spot per unit, does that include the affordable housing units?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure about that. Does anyone on the board walk on Fourth Avenue?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how busy it is. Okay, that was my question. And then I think the original plan, if I remember correctly, was 108 units, and it's bumped up to, in this presentation, 130. The last time we were here, it was 124.
So the redevelopment,
So my comment, I guess,
No, question?
that's my question. That's my question. That's my question.
Yeah, we'll get you back to
yes, the answer,
comments. I'll
so
get you.
what the redevelopment plan
permits is up to 130 units.
Okay.
I think you might be referring to the presentation that had been provided at council in previous discussions. I anticipate that the plan will likely include a few less units than 130. But the redevelopment plan is intended to give flexibility in a variety of places, including with the number of units.
Okay. The frontage, the elevation on 4th Avenue, the design will be similar, I imagine, to, you didn't have it in this presentation.
Correct. It's not shown, but it is subject to that same provision that I referenced when we talked about the rear of the building, which is that it has to have, need not be the same, but it must be unified in terms of colors, materials, architectural design.
Gotcha. And then will there be any bike parking outside? I know the one inside obviously would be for residents, but would there, especially with some of the two retail spaces, there could be additional parking?
It's
bicycle
not
parking
specifically
outside?
required.
Just curious.
There's
Okay.
a parking requirement, or excuse me, bicycle parking requirement for the residents, but there are additional street furnishings which include but are not limited to bicycle parking spaces that are required on, say, Memorial Drive.
Okay. And then
If I may, but with that, what you're saying is that we normally, when we get the site plans, we usually ask for those things.
Right.
That's still available.
Yes.
We're still
Yes.
allowed to do that.
We're still
Absolutely.
empowered.
We're still
Yes.
empowered to do it.
Yes.
Okay, so we normally ask for that anyway.
So,
But keep us honest though.
okay, yeah. So I know this is going to continue to be a topic of discussion with this egress and entrance into the building on 4th Avenue. Have there been actual studies? I think somebody brought it up about pedestrian studies, but just traffic studies in general, only because the residential areas are on the side streets. And we're looking at people visiting the space, looking for parking. There's going to be a lot more. Like, what has there been a traffic? Have you guys looked at a traffic report or analysis?
So there's been no traffic study yet. I would imagine that the planning board will require all of its typically requested traffic information as part of site plan approval. And I don't know, I don't do the planning board work typically, but I would assume you guys require traffic impact
In a
statements as part of
situation
a
like this, we
significant
would want
application.
that.
Okay.
Yes, so you'll see that study at the time of site plan.
Okay.
Well, they'll evaluate traffic.
Then my last question, I just want to, are you a consultant that works for the city?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes.
I just want to make sure.
That's okay. We were all asking you.
Anyone else from the public that would like to ask a question?
Hi, Polly Shilga. I'm on Fifth Avenue. Building on what Kitty was asking, and James, you mentioned earlier, you were talking, I couldn't hear you, talking kind of fast. The bike lanes that you have proposed for Memorial that are in the plan, did you say it's a two-way cycle track or one on each side?
So it was one, I think you did the plans, there's one on each
Yeah,
side,
yeah.
protected by a painted buffer, and then on the, what is that, the west side, there's
Okay,
cars.
that's what I thought. So bike lanes utilized as traffic calming, I believe that what we have planned on the Memorial reconfiguration is traffic calming methods that will then really change the nature of Memorial Drive, making it so that it really could make it possible and much safer for egress and ingress to the building rather than increasing traffic on 4th and 5th, or 4th or 5th. And knowing what the crash reports are at the corner, whether there's a light or not. That's such a dangerous corner at 4th and Memorial. So with that in consideration, I would like just to ask whether you think that might be a possibility, knowing that Memorial will be slower. The traffic will be calmer. It's an opinion kind of question, but it might be something to consider.
Of relocating the access?
Yes.
I prefer the access from the way that it's proposed from the side street. Although, as a resident speaking up, I appreciate the concern that it will lead to additional activity along that road. I certainly can't dispute that. I'm happy to entertain and explore the idea if the planning board makes that recommendation.
Okay, thanks. And then the other thing is it considered public space, the setback of the green space on 4th and 5th? Is that public space? Or is that owned by the developer?
It is largely owned by the developer. There's, some of that green space is within the public right-of-way, but the 22-foot setback, say, from 4th and 5th, that's private area for the developer.
So I'm not sure if I understand how much of that is available for the board to determine whether there are going to be bike racks or artwork, or even, we had talked about earlier, I don't know if the developer recalls, we had a conversation about putting even small play equipment or a little climbing wall or something going on in that area to utilize that as public space.
Generally, the planning board generally has jurisdiction over the entire property.
Okay.
The redevelopment plan certainly has certain requirements that the planning board is obligated to follow or consider as part of the site plan application. But your point is, how much of that green space shown on the concept plan is subject to the planning board discussion about what's going to be there, what plantings, whether it'll be play equipment. I would say all of that is subject to the planning board's review. The limitation is going to be to what extent anything might conflict with the redevelopment plan, although I don't believe what you've just cited, how that green space actually would have a conflict with the redevelopment plan. I just need to add that caveat because there are several requirements in there that the board will need to comply with.
Thanks. And we're just envisioning how those spaces are going to be utilized, and then adding traffic and adding the ingress and egress from the building on 4th Avenue could become a conflict. Just adding more traffic and more in and out going on there. And then my last question is storm drains. Is that the responsibility of the developer? And can we talk about, you don't have to talk about it right now, but I would like to think that you'd be considering how that's going to be addressed. We have a lot of flooding.
Site plan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's addressed during site plan in the engineering phase of the project.
Can you explain that?
Other than telling you it
Briefly?
will be addressed during site plan, the engineer for the applicant comes in with their proposed drainage plans, all of their engineering details, site grading.
Have they considered bioswales or?
And then the board's engineers will look that over, and the board's engineers will make sure that the plans that are submitted comply with the regulations.
So the redevelopment plan doesn't address stormwater management.
No.
It requires compliance.
Yeah.
That every development in the city and elsewhere in the state is required to comply with the state stormwater management rules. This redevelopment plan gives no relief to that. But how the developer will comply with it is not set forth, and there's no requirement set forth in the redevelopment plan. But they will have to comply.
All right, so you can come when it's presented in front of the planning board, when this application comes up, you can come, listen to see what's proposed, and comment with that.
Okay, I mean, we can go a lot further than just putting in a storm drain. There's so much more that can be done to alleviate stormwater.
And the stormwater management rules require so much more than just that.
Good.
Yeah,
And the
they're really very
sustainability-
comprehensive.
Sorry, the requirements does say, one of the sustainability requirements does include, it says rain gardens, bioswales,
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah, they will have to provide that, but the picture, yes, for certainly, but the picture for stormwater management is larger than that, of
Okay.
what they'll have to do to comply.
All right, thanks, good to know.
Okay. Before we go to the next person, a point of logic here, okay? You don't want to wait until the plan comes to us for any traffic studies. Because if we're not given the power to move the ingress and egress, getting a traffic study is not going to do us any good because our hands are tied and we're stuck with that location.
Correct.
So I would recommend that the board recommend that the mayor and council do the traffic studies before they make the final determination as to where the ingress and egress will be.
I have to do it.
Well, somebody, yeah, and because once we get it here and we start going down that road, the only thing we're gonna have, then we're gonna have a war between us and the applicant, and what are we gonna do? Tell them to go back for an amendment?
Oh, but that's fair, so we would put it in as a comment.
Yeah, a recommendation.
Put that as a
consistent with
recommendation.
what we're talking about, the location.
Yes.
Perform the traffic studies to come to an analytical
To a reasonable, like,
Yeah.
why would we want it here versus there?
Yeah.
And I think it's two-pronged. It's that the planning board be able to consider the ingress on either 4th or Memorial. Just don't have your power to do so taken away.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Yes.
that
Yes.
that determination should be based, or should be backed up with data that includes pedestrian counts
Yeah, whatever.
as well as
Full
vehicular
detail.
counts.
Yeah.
Traffic studies do not include pedestrian
No, I'm
counts.
saying, full
Yes,
details.
yeah.
All
So
the
I
details
think
that
you
you
should-
believe you need.
Because if the understanding is that there is a greater level of existing pedestrian traffic on 4th and 5th, introducing more vehicular in and outs on 4th or 5th would increase those conflicts more so than a lower pedestrian count
Right,
on
we
Memorial.
want to keep our options
Yeah.
open to make decisions based on data.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
And then I think that
That's
that
fair.
is all we could ask for.
Okay.
Any other questions? Up. Don't fight over it.
No, it's okay. Hi, Mike Sedano, 1000 4th Avenue, the superhighway of Asbury Park. Do you realize that a block away at the Shops of Sunset, whatever the hell it's called, their entrance and egress is from Memorial? And nobody's disapproved that. So that's a huge strip mall, a whole block, well, yeah, it's a whole block, the same as this is proposed, and their entrance and egress is off of Memorial. So,
Was that a question?
Yeah, was that a question?
yes, that was a question. Do you realize that? Okay.
Yeah,
So-
they have their parking, they have diagonal parking that's within the more.
Well, they also have a parking lot. They have a parking lot, and 9 times out of 10, there are cones blocking the,
You're not asking a question.
okay, I've crossed the line, so that's it.
I'm sorry, if she asked you a question, you have a right to respond. I stand corrected.
Okay, 9 times out of 10, there are cones blocking the entrance on Sunset because they don't want that entrance and exit on Sunset.
Yeah.
I don't know who puts the cones there, but there are cones there most of the time. That was my question. And my answer, my response to
Right, I get it.
your question.
My apologies for cutting you off.
That's okay.
Hi, Michael Kushner, 1100 Fifth Avenue. I live with Polly. My question is about the retail space, because when I read this little synopsis here, and I like the retail space a lot, it says optional ground floor commercial. So my question is, in your presentation, it shows 3 retail spots right now. But is it possible for the developer to say, you know what, I only want 2, or I want 1, or I want none to fit in more units? Is that a possibility where we can end up with just a residential building with no retail space?
No, the redevelopment plan requires consistency with the concept plan that shows the retail spaces on the first floor. I would expect that those retail spaces could shift a little bit. I believe the floor area is 1,925 square feet. I would expect that that might vary a bit, but not 0.
Okay, but it could be 1. In other words, there's not a minimum, is there a minimum, in the redevelopment plan, is there a minimum square footage as a percentage of the overall building?
It's not a minimum square footage. What will happen is the developer will submit a site plan, and it's required to be substantially consistent with the concept plan shown behind me. The planning board will review their site plan, and if it finds that it's not substantially consistent, the developer will not be able to proceed because they won't be able to meet the requirements of the redevelopment plan. So that's why I say, I expect that the retail floor area might shift both in terms of, whether it's exactly, that center space is exactly in the center, maybe it's shifted a little bit to the north or to the south, or that 1925 turns into 1850 or 2,000 square feet. But the possibility that it's going to turn into 0 or simply 1 space at the end of the building would be inconsistent with the redevelopment plan.
Okay.
May I ask?
So, yes.
Okay, pardon. We need an exact standard. Because we say it should be 1925, for example. The developer comes in and says 1700. We say no, it doesn't say that in the plan. It has to be substantially compliant. we're gonna go down that primrose path. We don't want it to be void for vagueness. We want it to be definitive. So if there's going to be some flexibility, you gotta figure out some type of language that you can put in there that we can apply that standard uniformly. And we gotta define it. And anytime you leave a door open, as an attorney, I can figure out 3 or 4 different ways to come in and out of it. And that's more to this gentleman's point, that you want more specificity so that we have proper guidance, so that the developer doesn't come in and start fighting with us. We get in the area of gray.
Sure, okay, we can add that.
Okay.
Thanks, Jack, for reinforcing.
Okay.
Yeah, and to that point, I would recommend, we recommend to the city council that there must be retail on both corners.
Yeah. And the middle.
Which I know, and when I read it,
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
I don't think any of us would agree, and I think we're the deciders, what's substantially consistent.
Correct.
That if there's not retail on both corners, it's not substantially consistent.
The reason
Correct.
that there's retail there is because the city
we don't want to
council
turn it
requested it.
The city council requested it.
Requested it, because originally it wasn't going to be any retail on the
Correct.
ground floor.
And you requested the 3?
I believe that we also wrote it in our letter to the city council. It was one of the.
Okay.
Hi, David Vidola. I live at 908 Fifth Avenue. I'm Eric's husband. The penthouse level, is it a straight line running parallel with Memorial? I assume there's one corridor, or is it down the center of the building? It was a little hard to tell on the plan.
I think you're asking, is it oriented along Memorial Drive?
And is it in the center of the mass of the building, or is it towards the back or the front? It's hard to tell.
It's oriented along Memorial, and I would say it's closer to the front, closer to Memorial than it is to the rear of towards the residences.
And I assume there's going to be some outdoor spaces. Are they going to be facing east or west?
They'll be oriented towards the east, towards Memorial, as opposed to looking out over the single-family residences to the
So
rear.
my home is right there. I'm wondering if there's people going to be partying on the roof. Well, I mean, I think they should have outdoor space if they're in the penthouse, but it'd be nice to know that they're on the other side.
It is closer to the other side. It's not going to be along that rear building line.
And are there also terraces along the back west side of the building? I noticed you have
Like
terraces
individual
on
balconies.
balconies.
That's not yet been, that's not something that's been regulated in the redevelopment plan. So that's something that I simply don't know, but would be subject to site plan approval.
The next question is on residential properties, when a homeowner puts up a fence between them and their neighbors, now I believe the setback is 2 feet. Does that apply to this business zone also?
Yeah, there's no change to those existing fence requirements. It just simply requires a solid fence, I think at a height of 6 feet, but any other fence requirement that the city may include, such as a 2-foot setback, would continue to apply. This does not overrule that, if you will.
That's the rule for residential and business? Does anybody know?
No, that's
That's what she does.
That's what she does.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay.
Do you have testimony with regard to consistency also? You have a two-phase thing, or are you done?
I thought I can address master plan consistency if the board would like. I thought you might like that.
Well, yeah, that's the basic
Yeah.
finding that we have to.
Yeah, can you give me 1 second? I just want to
Sure.
bring something else up. Let's see. So there are a couple pieces that I wanted to cite for master plan consistency.
Okay.
The first one is, I just wanted to, there's 2 parts that I wanted to address. One is what's contained in your most recent master plan document, that is your housing plan. And I think there is some relevance to that in there. There is There is language seeking affordable housing, incorporation of affordable housing wherever there's opportunity to do so. Specifically, one of the things you might recall is we adopted an ordinance referred to as a mandatory set-aside ordinance, which requires incorporation of affordable housing whenever there's rezoning, redevelopment plan, etc. And so I would find that this redevelopment plan is consistent with the intent of the housing plan in order to promote affordable housing wherever redevelopment occurs. And then, I'm sorry, give me 1 second, I'm just trying to get to the second part for master plan consistency. Okay. And then as I look at your 2017 reexamination report, there are a handful of parts that are relevant to this redevelopment plan. So first, I want to be clear that the reexamination report or any other document such as your previous land use element does not specifically make a recommendation to change the zoning on this site to that which you see contained in the redevelopment plan. However, there are a handful of planning goals and land use objectives that you guys have included in your master plan that I think are relevant. Some of these include, for example, providing for a variety of housing types for all income levels throughout the city. Also, encouraging art and culture activities and installations in the city's mixed use and commercial districts that contribute to quality of life for city residents. We also include, for your land use objectives, an objective to support the upgrading of substandard properties in the city through ordinance amendments and other initiatives, including code enforcement efforts. Additionally, there's an objective to continue to encourage new retail and commercial mixed-use developments consistent with the city's redevelopment plans. While this is not an existing redevelopment plan, of course, we're in a redevelopment area and in a portion of the city that is long been in need of redevelopment as a vacant property. We also have an objective to simply prepare a redevelopment plan for redevelopment areas that don't yet have plans. This would certainly address that. And the last item I wanted to note was to two other items. Enhance the built environment through installation of public art. Certainly we have art proposed along Memorial Drive. And then to reevaluate and redefine existing commercial corridors, including the possibility of shrinking some commercial corridors and strengthening others. Encourage neighborhood service-oriented retail on corner lots in residential neighborhoods. And so I think the first part of that objective to redefine existing commercial corridors, potentially shrinking them, is consistent with what we see here, as Memorial Drive is certainly one of the city's primary commercial corridors, and instead of having retail across the entire frontage, we have a limited amount of roughly 1,900 square feet shown in the concept plan or reflected in the redevelopment plan. So as I look through your land use plan objectives as well as the general planning goals in the city, I think there are a handful in here that the planning board can draw from for its consideration of master plan consistency. And I do think that there's enough in here for the board to find that the redevelopment plan overall is not inconsistent with your master plan, although I do want to remind folks that there's nothing specifically called for, no specific recommendation that was intended as a preamble to this redevelopment plan.
So then your net opinion is it's consistent?
Yeah.
That's what I need to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's consistent with the master plan, land use element, and housing plan.
Does anybody on the planning board have any questions regarding those last statements? Okay.
Public?
Any questions from the public regarding the master plan?
Sorry, I wasn't
I guess while you've demonstrated, I agree with you that it is consistent with the land use and the housing components of the plan. Can we talk about the other elements of consistency, like our complete streets policy, pedestrianization, safety, urban design? Like, what about the other components of the master plan?
I'm happy to. I just focused on the housing and the land use for MLUL purposes, but in terms of your circulation and complete streets, I think that I know that the board has a concern about where the access is provided, and setting that issue aside for the moment. What we see here is provision of sidewalks along all three frontages of the building, also the provision of bicycle parking specifically for a substantial portion of the residents of the site, and also as part of the street furnishings that the applicant is required to provide, the board will have the opportunity to review that and determine to what extent bicycle parking for visitors of the site should be included. And so because of the sidewalk as well as the bike parking, I do think it's consistent, generally speaking, with complete street strategies. I don't think it's inconsistent with the city's circulation objectives either. In terms of urban design, I have to admit I don't recall some of your objectives off the top of my head. But
we don't need to belabor it. Your general testimony is that it's consistent in those ways as well.
yeah, yes. The design of the building, I think, is furthering quality design in the city. I don't think it's inconsistent with the character that we see of the built environment, specifically the more recent built environment in the city. And some of the building requirements, such as the building height, setbacks of the site, are not inconsistent with what is either permitted or what exists within the surrounding neighborhood.
Any questions from the public? Okay.
Yeah, relative to that portion of the testimony?
I think so.
Well, give it a shot.
I'll give it a shot. So does this, if this building gets approved, does this mean that there's the possibility that all along Memorial Drive, we could have 4.5-story high buildings going up? If somebody comes along and buys, the heating company building, he could just say, you know what, I'm going to go up, okay?
Much of Memorial Drive is in the B district, and that currently permits a building height of 4 stories, 50 feet. So the short answer to your question is generally yes. It permits a lower density of residential housing, but that height is roughly equivalent to what you see in this redevelopment plan.
And no setbacks.
So,
yeah, thank you.
Okay, so since everything west of Memorial Drive is residential, isn't the scale out of whack of this arrangement? I mean, you're going to have the Boardwalk Ocean Place, okay, height in relationship to houses that are on the same block. How does something like that get approved?
Well, I can't speak to the history of the B district, but I don't think it's unusual to see greater intensity of building along primary streets in an area, in this case along Memorial, which is the primary street serving this area of the city generally. It's typical in municipalities, it's typical in planning principles to put more intensity along areas that are served by busier streets with more capacity, such as Memorial, compared to these side streets.
Does it? Okay.
But I think that's a comment you might want to make later, though.
Okay, that goes to the comment.
Okay. All right, we want to open up to public comment. Or I should say, is your testimony
Just one more question. on the-
Sure. Not
Just as
finished?
I'm looking at the concept plans, the one in the actual redevelopment plan versus the presentation, one of them includes the bike room, one of them doesn't. So can we just confirm that the bike room will be, is part of the concept plan?
Yeah, hold on one moment, let me. I realized, I'm sorry to say, about halfway through this presentation, I pulled a old concept plan, so I'm sorry about that. Yes, I do still have a bike room. Bikes are required to be parked in the area, and I think I have a bike room, I'm sorry, it's over on the left side of the building at this point, adjacent to electrical and trash.
We don't have that on either of the two we had.
Yeah, it's shown in the draft redevelopment plan. It just doesn't have a label of bicycle on it.
Okay, so that one in the upper right is not part of the.
It's not it.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, yes.
Which one is it?
It's shown on the left side of the building.
Okay, so the copy that we have doesn't have it.
It's just not labeled as such.
So it's that little one right above the trash room?
Correct. And then I also want to note that they're
That's
required
tiny.
to provide bicycle parking for 30, I think it's 30% of the residents, units in the building.
That looks, I don't know much about bicycles, but that looks a little tight.
130 bikes?
No, 30, was it 30%?
Yeah, it's 30% of the.
30%, that's a little tight for that many
Well,
bicycles.
there's no reason they couldn't be that other corner.
Forty bikes.
But that will also come up
But that's over
as
the
part of
outside,
site
yeah.
plan.
This upper right corner is not.
Well, I mean, in this drawing, I think, drawing out is
130.
perfect. I think the room could move, probably. You know, it's close there.
Or the elevator. I think the state requires.
All right, as long as we say that there's requirement for 30%, then when we get to site plan, we'll make sure there's 30%.
Absolutely, it's cited on page 9.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, as long as we have that.
Okay.
Okay. Any, can we open up, can I get a motion to open up public comment?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All
All
opposed?
right,
None, ayes have it. Sorry, Maria.
okay, we have,
Hustle us along.
anybody that would like to make a comment? We
Yeah,
have,
when you make your comments, you can actually give testimony, so I need you to raise your right hand.
and you have 3 minutes.
You solemnly swear a testimony about giving this matter with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Okay, please state your name.
David Vadola, 908 Fifth Avenue. I am generally pleased with this plan. As an immediate neighbor, the egress and where the driveway is to get into the building on 4th is a big mistake. It needs to be on Memorial. Memorial is, as was stated, they can go wherever they want once they get on Memorial. If there's a traffic light on 4th, it's going to help a great deal. Drivers are more apt to stop for you in the crosswalk on Memorial than they are when they're going to be zooming through 4th to Langford to 5th and out to Sunset. They don't stop for you there. It's dangerous, it's not well lit. On Memorial, they are more apt to stop for you. They'll figure it out. This is 2023. We can create the driveway on Memorial and it can work, well designed. Fourth is just wrong for that. And the 4th Avenue people are going to be out of their minds crazy with this. So really you have to do your traffic studies and pedestrian study, and it really needs to be moved to Memorial. The impact on the neighborhoods is going to be so great. It's not just 4th. They're going to be turning up and weaving around through the streets, and it'll be more dangerous for people walking in the neighborhood than it will be on Memorial. New York City has driveways all over the place, and they figure it out. Jersey City has driveways coming out on the street, and they figure it out. I think we can do better. That's my biggest problem with the plan, is where the cars enter and exit this building. Thank you.
Catherine Minervini, 1012 Fifth Avenue. First of all, I do want to say.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear testimony about the giving this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
First of all, Beth, the presentation was great. Thank you very much for being so thorough, walking us through it. To the developer, thank you. I think you've done a really nice job. Also, I appreciate that you've taken into consideration the setbacks especially, but also a lot of the landscape and such. I do not agree with the entrance. I mean, look, I'm not a professional in this, so Beth, I know you said you highly recommend the 4th Avenue. I understand why, but if it was in the center of the building on Memorial, it's further away of where that future light will be, and it'll give people time. It just seems to me if people are coming out of that entrance on 4th with the light right there, it's going to be a mess. I walk up and down 4th and 5th at least twice a day, if not more. 4th is kind of a nightmare as it is on a good day. The bumps do nothing for the traffic. People zoom down there all the time. The traffic coming out of there and then using that as a throughway, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Why wouldn't people come out of that building and have a choice to go north or south to all the other egresses or to go over to the beach? It just doesn't make any sense. To Mike's point about the in and out at Sunset Plaza, there not only is there a parking lot there, but people are going in and out to the diagonal spaces all day long, in, out. I mean, that's almost essentially the same thing. So I would highly recommend that the board consider looking at that closer. On the affordable housing, Jim brought up a comment about increasing it. Do not take this the wrong way. I'm all for affordable housing, but the reason we keep creeping up to 130 units is because it started at 108, and because the city made them put the 20% mark of the affordable housing, it's now increased to almost 130. So could we just leave it at the 124? Because this project's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Solemnly swear testimony about the giving this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes or no?
Sure. Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Mike Sedano, 1004th.
Thank you.
I strongly urge the board to recommend you move the entrance and egress to Memorial. 4th Avenue is a mess. Trucks, dump trucks, cars all day long. You have to, just to cross Langford to get to the other side from 4th, you have to pull halfway out to see if there are cars coming left and right. If you add entrance and egress of 100 some odd additional cars, it's gonna be a mess. So I strongly urge you to recommend that the entrance and egress be moved to Memorial Drive. If that is supposed to be a major thoroughfare, people will figure it out. We haven't been able to calm traffic on 4th ever since I've been there. So adding another 100 cars coming and going on 4th is going to be a disaster to the neighborhood. And as Kitty said, 4th and 5th, you have people walking all day long, winter, summer, spring, and fall, dogs, kids. Kids use Langford and Comstock to cross to go to school. Adding more cars onto 4th and coming into 4th to go to the building is going to be a disaster. Nothing against your building. I think the building is going to add, it's a lot better than the empty lot we have now. But I think there's a way to make it work. That's my comment.
Anyone else? All right, motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Does anyone from the planning board have any comments that they would like to make?
Before the planning board does their thing, can I?
You may.
Yeah. Okay.
Go.
Beth, when I read through this, the uses, the first section that talks about uses says these are considered permitted uses. Anything changes has to be by way of amendment because it's a use variance.
Right.
Further down, there seemed to be some vagueness as to what's clearly bulk or what's use. So I'm just asking you to take a look at that to make sure that we have all of we make sure we characterize the appropriate variance with the appropriate category. And also anything that might be a design item, can somebody take a look at that and perhaps say these are design features, and then if we grant relief from that, would be design exceptions.
So, just confirm that items are labeled as variances or exceptions.
Yeah,
Okay.
bulk use and then design exceptions.
Okay.
Yeah, so this way we don't have any vagueness and we don't have to go to the zoning board of adjustment for clarification. That would be a nightmare. And we want to streamline it and make it right, that's all. If you look through it, you might see a couple of inconsistencies or vagueness, that's all.
Sure.
Other than that, I'm good from a legal perspective.
Okay. Does anyone else from the planning board have any comments that they would like to make?
One other thing. I think Jason, Inside Engineering, should have some input into the traffic study, traffic count as to...
They're not here.
I understand, but they've asked for a traffic count, but what the requirements of that traffic count are going to be, I think...
That's the mayor and council's job.
Okay.
They should, if they want to hire Jason, where are they going to hire Jason?
No, what I'm saying, John, I don't mean Jason to do it, but he should have some suggestion as to what really needs to be done to satisfy these requirements that we're putting on the mayor and council, or recommending that they provide traffic studies.
More appropriately, you might want to get a better target there so you get the bullseye. You recommend to the mayor and council that they hire the appropriate traffic consultants, not just any board engineer, traffic consultants to arrive at these traffic and pedestrian studies. Not just use the general engineering firm, use traffic consultants.
I wasn't thinking of Jason doing the study, but I was thinking of him as suggesting as to what those studies should include so that they don't have to come back again.
Okay, that's up
We have
to
a
the board.
transportation manager.
We have a
And that's-
transportation manager that will be able to...
Yeah, they'll get, I'll make sure I'll put the appropriate language in that the point will be well understood.
Okay.
What you're looking for. Yeah, I'll make sure.
All right, so do you want to go over your list? Do you want to go over my list? What do you
Yeah,
want to
well,
do?
I have a bunch. The last time we took the approach, we did it via letter, we do it by resolution now with a reference with a whole bunch of recommendations, okay? But my recommendations are, number one, I wrote down, so I wouldn't forget at my advanced age, the clarification on what's a variance, what's a bulk variance, what's a use variance, what's a design exception. In general, because I'm trying to think and write at the same time. The buffer for the trees and the fencing, that the board has the option of how and where the fence and the shrubbery and so the landscaping will be located within the buffer.
Right, that's on the
Gives you that
western side.
flexibility, yeah, on the west side.
Yep.
There was one comment, increase in affordable units, that's up to you. Board flexibility on sidewalk locations out on Memorial.
Oh, we have to actually think that was more that we could see it because we couldn't tell.
Okay.
We couldn't tell on the
I
depictions that we
the board
have.
should retain some
Yeah.
control over specific,
Yeah, it was hard to see
Okay.
specific
Yeah, I mean,
layouts
Yeah, but I get something
of
along those
the
lines.
sidewalks.
So just that we need to approve it at site plan.
Yes.
Yeah, I had the west facade being harmonious with the other three sides, but I think Beth may have answered that, so I struck it.
Yeah, I think that was taken care of.
Okay, the board requests the power or jurisdiction to determine the location of the ingress and egress for the project, whether it be whatever street.
consider.
Right.
Well, consider.
We would consider based on traffic studies and
Well,
pedestrian studies.
to that end, board recommends that the council conduct traffic and pedestrian impact studies appropriate for the recommendation.
Right.
Okay.
Is that right?
Well, just another way we could go about it is rather than recommend that the council do it, just leave in the redevelopment plan that the ingress or egress could be on Fourth or Memorial, but we need to see, the developer has to bring us traffic studies and
Well,
site plan.
I think it's the city that has to do the traffic studies.
I think my way is the more
Okay,
appropriate way
yeah.
for you to go.
Yeah.
Keeps, either they're gonna give it to you or they're not.
Okay.
If they give you the power, it should be based on traffic studies,
Okay.
James's input, however it works, however they take care of it to get to where it needs to be.
Okay.
Okay. And then retail on both corners of the project and whatever else you tell me to put in.
Okay. We wanted to maintain with this streetscape, which was something we just said about the approval of streetscape with the site plan. We talked about the requirement of 30% bike racks. I think, is that in there already, or do we have to ask for
Yes.
it? That's already in, so we don't have to ask for that. Okay. There was a clarification or a statement that says there's one parking space per unit, and EV spaces are not going to be removed from that requirement.
So clarify the parking requirement.
Right, clarify that it's not going to be reduced because there are EV spaces.
Yeah, no credit to reduce.
Right, there are no
One
credits.
physical space per.
Correct. Okay. Okay, we have that. All right, there was a statement about the 60% transparent on Memorial? There was something about that?
It states 60% transparency for non-residential spaces. The comment was make sure the redevelopment plan is clear that that does not apply to the parking area. The
Okay.
parking is not one of those non-residential uses for the purpose of that requirement.
All right, so that's already in there, or that's something we have to state?
I'm going to clarify what non-residential uses mean in that particular item.
Okay.
So you're okay? Okay. All right, we have to, I don't know, the other things that I have to do with opinions of the board, having to do with the request for the increasing the affordable to 25%. There was a request from the public to not, for fear of increasing the amount of units. What does the board feel that, do they want to put that on as a request, or do they want to leave it at the 20%?
I prefer to see it increased.
That's one. What are we gonna-
I prefer to see it increased.
Okay.
I mean, just as a consideration.
Sure, I mean, I would love to see this as a 100% affordable project like that, but I think that the 20%, my expertise in this particular area is 20% is hard to get. And the mathematics of the equation have to work. And so I would love to see it higher than 20%, but I think 20% is acceptable.
Right, but is that something, all right, go
I was
ahead.
gonna
Yvonne.
say, 20% is the requirement.
Correct.
One. And number two, asking the developer to increase the percentage makes it more expensive to
I think
build the building.
Jeopardizes the project.
And that's true. So I would not
You would
ask for an additional 20%.
Two for,
Does anybody
two
else?
against?
I prefer to just leave it at least 20, which is what it says now.
Okay. Anybody else
Can't go
want
lower
to
than
say?
20, could be more.
There could be more.
Yeah.
It won't be, but
3?
Did anybody else want to say?
Yeah,
Okay.
I need your opinions.
No.
Okay, that's 4.
Yeah, I echo what Eric said. I wish that there'd be more, but I also understand there's been a lot of looking at what can work. So I think the 20% is probably.
So you got
Okay.
5 no's and 2
Then it goes.
yeses, so then that wouldn't be on the list.
Okay.
Unless you tell me otherwise. So we don't have to go through a specific vote on every one. It would be there for-
No, and there's just one other that I'd like to bring up, and I did bring it up before. I don't know how the board feels about it, and it has to do with the east and west sides where we have the taller extension that's above the 40 some odd feet plus the penthouse plus the extension. And that's supposed to be on both the north and the south side. On the depiction, we do have it on it's on the east and the west side. No, it's not, it's on the north side. So it's on the north side, we have a depiction of it on the north side. Are we in agreement that we want that extra footage in the middle of the building going above the penthouses?
So you want that elevator in the middle of the building?
I don't know about anything about an elevator.
Well,
That's where the elevators are.
Oh, I didn't know where the elevators were.
That's where the elevators are, and that's why there's an extension.
I would, if the board's concerned about the building height, I would encourage you to make a comment that is about reduction of the building height and then allowing the developer to conduct the appropriate redesign. And if there's a specific item that or aspect of the design that you have a concern about, let's state that as opposed to stating where the elevator should be or something
Oh,
along those
yeah,
lines.
I didn't realize the elevator was there. Because we were up in the air on that.
Yeah, I'm just generally saying, let's simplify the comment, identify the concern, if the board wants to ask for that change, and then allow the developer to make the appropriate changes.
I'm just looking for some opinions from our board members.
Quite honestly, this doesn't bother me, just looking at it how it is now. I mean, it's 48 to the roof line and then plus
12.
Plus 12, so.
Plus something else, whatever that.
Only over the utilities.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the elevator's there, then that goes above
That goes up.
it. I get that.
Oh, we can at site plan time,
I
say
get
the
that.
elevator mechanicals can't be right along the street. They have to be, whatever.
No, if the elevator is there, I'm okay with
Because I think
this.
architecturally, this is, if it's 60 feet, I mean, it has to be 60 feet somewhere, there's gonna be penthouses. This, architecturally delineates where the entrance is, it looks nice. I don't have a particular problem with it as proposed.
I think also it's minimally on the front, it's like kind of set back from Memorial. I know it's right on 5th and 4th, but it's not much of it. I think it's decent the way it is.
And I would also point out again that on the 5th Avenue side, the closest building is 100 feet away. On the 4th Avenue side, the closest building is 150 feet away.
Right.
Because there's an extra parcel. So the potential impact to the closest buildings, in which I live in one, is.
All right, so then it's a no.
Well,
I'm okay with it.
I got 3 folks that have talked.
I'm fine with leaving it.
Okay, so you're the 4th, so it doesn't matter.
I'm fine with it.
3 regardless.
It caps
It's
the
just an
building height-
understanding.
It caps
That
the
one
building height
stays.
at 48 feet plus 12 feet for
Okay.
penthouses, and that's
And that's
which
what's
is
in the plan.
And more,
very.
and
that's-
more.
but that's
But that's the elevator.
But that's normal in every one of our towns. If
Okay.
building height is 60 feet, you still get the little whatever bumps up past that.
Except the elevator doesn't run to the penthouse. Other than that, it's fine.
The elevator.
Okay, any other?
All right, let me see. That's all I have. I don't know if anybody else has anything else.
How about consistency with the master plan? We find that to be a fact? Yeah, all right, so I want to do a formal vote on that. And my recommendation is that I'd circulate these recommendations like we did the last time. The resolution is simple, it's pro forma, I can knock that out in no time, but I'll circulate this for everybody well in advance of the next meeting. Get your comments like we did the last time, we'll refine it down, and you come back and vote on it. So that it's adopted and referred back.
When is our 45-day review period?
This was referred over in September, I think, I don't know if we're at you have considered it, I don't know if you considered it within the 45 days, but council's never held us to that.
Okay, thank God.
Yeah, no.
So generous.
I've always been able to do the
Things may
lawyer thing on this. Yeah, let's just see here. This is, 28th day of September, we're within the 45 days that you're going to vote on this.
So then the next vote would be on the, what, the 20th?
Yeah, you're going to
Okay.
be, by the time we send the resolution over, it'll be a hair over, but you can't, how can you do a resolution in advance of something like this? I'd have to be a genius, and far from that. So,
All right.
So if we could just get let's just get a vote, a motion, A, finding that it's consistent generally with the master plan objectives that Beth testified to, and B, that these, what I've already outlined is what we're basically going to take, and we're going to enhance it and make more sense out of it instead of just scribbling notes of the meeting.
All right.
And we'll make it that it's going to be, those are going to be your recommendations over to council.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion for the first one where it is consistent with the master plan. I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. How about having the same two folks do the same thing? So I don't want to do two
Okay,
resolutions.
that's fine.
And bill you for two.
That's fine. I'll make a motion to approve this redevelopment plan with the conditions and comments that we've spoken about.
Right. Okay.
And then,
Yvonne, you want a second?
Second.
Okay. Want to do the same thing?
sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, Marie. I think that's the ballgame.
I think that's the ballgame. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Oh, one thing I just want to mention to the public. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
It's cool.
We love having the public come and give their opinions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For caring.
It was enjoyable. Thank you.